Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Maker. It is a beautiful day to talk all about sublimation and all the mistakes that I've made so you don't have to. Now, when I first started, I made so many mistakes. Looking back, I wish someone would have clued me in on some of the tips and tricks that could have built up my confidence and helped me avoid all of my troubles. Instead, I learned by trial and error, but as I like to say, I make mistakes so you don't have to. So let's talk about it. And I'm going to help you sublimate all the things with more confidence. I've got lots of mistakes to share and tips for beginners and for veterans. So if my tips seem really easy at first, like you already know that, just wait. Also, I want you to do me a favor. When you hear a tip or a mistake that's new or whatever, or you just think is really going to help you, I want you to tell me in the comments. Let me know, okay? I'm watching the comments. I can see everything. Your feedback matters to me. So just yell out if you're like, yes, that was me, or that used to be me. I figured it out. Because I'm challenging myself today to see how many people I can help. So please pull up a chair here in my craft studio and let's chat all about sublimation. All right, before I get started, I just want to remind everyone that Sublimation Camp is coming up this week. I learned so much from Sublimation Camp last year, and I know this year is going to be even better with brand new workshops. Everyone that's here is invited to join us at camp, and you can get a free ticket at jennifermaker.com/sublimationcamp. Let me put up my link, which I think is right here. Oh, I got it right. So jennifermaker.com/sublimationcamp to learn over 25 amazing sublimation skills and projects and have a fun time with the organizers, Angie Holden and Corey George, you know them, and other camp counselors like Delonda, Amy, Courtney, Abby, Jamela, and other experts. And I think there's nearly 30,000 other sublimation crafters who have already signed up. So be sure you've got your ticket at jennifermaker.com/sublimationcamp. It starts on Thursday, so be sure you got your ticket before Thursday. All right, and it's free, don't forget that. So sublimation is a really cool technique that can take our crafts to the next level. I have tried all the types of sublimation there are that I know of, from pre-printed sublimation transfers and pens and markers to doing my own sublimation prints on my printer. And I have basically all the printers that do it, at least our level of printers. I don't have the big ones, like the big ones, that cost like $1 million. But I have a Sawgrass, Epson EcoTank, the Epson F170, and so on. So whether you're brand new to all of this or you've been doing it for years now, I've got some tips and tricks for you. If even just one of these helps you, then my mission is complete. All right, so mistake number 1. So I got my first sublimation printer 2 years ago. I bought an Epson EcoTank and some sublimation ink. I put it in my craft room on a counter. I smiled at it, I gave it a nice pat, and then I gave it a sideways glance. I knew I had to convert it to sublimation by putting this other ink into it that I got, but I'd never done it. So I told myself I'd do it later. Later turned into almost a year. I let my awesome printer just sit there without ink, without anything happening for such a long time because fear. It was just out of fear. This is probably my biggest mistake. I feared the unknown and uncertainty of this new thing that I got. Imagine all of the things I could have made in that wasted time. It was actually the very first sublimation camp that got me motivated to put the sublimation ink into my printer and try it. And it was so easy. I felt a little silly when I realized I had built it up into some big deal. I think sometimes we all just read too many posts or watch too many videos. All of my high fact finders, you know what I'm talking about. And you think it's going to be harder than it is, and it just isn't. So mistake number 1 was not getting my sublimation printer set up right away when I got it. If you have a printer you got and it's still sitting in the box, it's time to get it out and set it up. Trust me, you can do this. It is a mistake not to. So if you are like this, if you've got your printer and it's still in the box, or maybe you took it out of the box, but you haven't used it yet, let me know in the chat. If you overcame this like I did, I want to know that too. Tell me. Tell me in the chat, because this is a big deal. I think this might be the biggest mistake so many new people make, is just the fear of the printer, right? And we read about all of these things. And even this video that I'm making for you, you might be like, oh my gosh, she's made so many mistakes. I'm going to fail miserably. You're not. You're not going to fail miserably. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them, and it's going to be okay. I promise. This video is so I can share some of my mistakes, so maybe you can skip them. I'm seeing lots of people say, I see both. I see people who bought it and it's still there. Please open your box and get it out. And I see people who have overcome it. Norma, open your box and get it out and use it. I promise it's going to be okay. It was okay for me. It's going to be okay for you. All right. My second mistake was not maintaining my printers. I'm a little embarrassed to share this one, but hey, maybe it'll help someone. So I knew from my research that the converted Epson Eco Tanks, which I've got one right here, need to be printed from at least once a week to keep the sublimation ink from drying out, right? If you haven't heard that, now you have. But well, I kind of forgot to do it for a month once. Hey, I got busy. We all do, right? And sure enough, my yellow ink line got clogged and it wouldn't print. To fix my mistake, I had to spend a bunch of time actually, and a bunch of ink to print printer purge files, which is just a full sheet of ink designed to get the ink moving and flowing so the clog clears itself. By the way, I saved these purge files that I made so you could use them if you also make the mistake. You can get them in the description of this video. Just scroll down and click show more to see the description. If you're on mobile, either swipe up or click the arrow to expand the description. Okay, so I have these. I have a bunch of other things in there too. There's a lot of helpful sublimation links and other free things in the description. I even made this mistake with my Sawgrass sublimation printer. So the cool thing about the Sawgrass is that it will do maintenance for you to keep your ink from clogging, which is really cool. But you have to keep your Sawgrass plugged in and turned on in order for that to happen. Well, guess who forgot that and unplugged it? Me. Hey, like I say, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. So if you have a Sawgrass printer, keep it turned on so it will do the cool things it's supposed to do. The big takeaway here is that sublimation printers need maintenance to keep working well. Do what you need to take care of them, even if it's just keeping it plugged in and turned on, or be prepared to fix your mistakes like I did. You can almost always, so far I've always been able to fix my mistakes. Most people can too. A printer purge sheet is the first place I recommend you start, rather than cleaning your print heads, because cleaning your print heads, while it is one of the options, it can shorten the life of your printer. And we're talking specifically about the Epson right now. All right, mistake number 3. Okay, let's talk about smears on our prints. There are a few things that irk me more than a big smear right in the middle of a beautiful sublimation print that I'm about to apply. The first thing to do, the first thing you do when you print anything is to wait for the ink to dry completely before touching it. Sometimes that's not enough though, as the smear is happening like right in the printer itself. Like as soon as it comes off, you see the smear, right? So there's 2 reasons I know for this to happen, and I've had both happen. First, your printer rollers get dirty and they transfer ink to your paper as it's moving through the machine. You can usually tell that that's why it's doing it, because the smears are where your rollers would be, right? So you can see your rollers if you look in your printer, right? If you think this is an issue, use a little alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, to clean the rollers inside your printer where extra ink might have accumulated. It's not easy, no, but it's totally doable. I've done it. It just takes a little patience. Now, the other reason that this can happen is when your paper is so thick and stiff that it hits parts of the printer with ink on them, like as it's passing through. So I had this happen with my Epson Workforce, which is not like a printer I recommend, but some people still use it. When I switched to a thinner paper, I switched from this A sub 125 and I switched to 105. Do I have it here? I don't have it here, but it's like they have different weights of paper. So when I switched to 105 instead of 125, the problem went away. So the thinner paper made a difference. So if you're noticing that you're always picking up ink when you print, try a thinner paper. Okay. And also, you know something before, I can't forget this one. This is a big one. This probably goes all the way back to the very beginning. When you get your printer, you know, you've heard us all talk about the Epson EcoTank printers. It will come with some ink. Don't put that ink in. I think that sometimes we're on autopilot or something, or maybe we get the printer and someone sets it up helpfully for us. Make sure you don't put the original Epson normal inkjet ink into your printer. You want to use Sublimation ink. I really like Hippo ink. There's plenty of other great inks out there, but this is the one that I use, and it's awesome. Hippo ink. It's HIIPOO. Okay? All right. Mistake number 4. The next big mistake was judging my prints before I press them. So, and I've got one right here. So the first time you print from your printer, it might look like it comes out and you're like, this is like way too light. What is wrong, right? It just doesn't look right. So you're not sure what's wrong with your thing, right? With your print. So remember, this is what I see. The first time you print from your printer, you might look at what comes out and be like, this is not right. This is what I notice, right? What is wrong with this? So light prints are totally normal and to be expected. The sublimation ink doesn't get activated until you heat it. So your sublimation prints will be light at first. And let me give you a close-up so you can see. There we go. So this looks pretty light, right? This is, of course, mirrored. I have properly mirrored this, but you'll notice it's not like super vibrant. So your sublimation prints will be light at first. I remember my first prints and I was really worried I had messed up. Thankfully, I tried pressing them and I realized that everything was fine. But I know some folks in my sublimation group make this mistake too, and then they stop and they don't press it, right? And they think they've made a mistake and they don't continue on. So just remember this. You need to press your print before you see the true colors, right? So if it doesn't look right, just take that extra step and press it. And I recommend that you get yourself some polyester fabric, 100% polyester fabric to do your tests on, especially when you're learning, okay? In fact, this leads me to my 4th big mistake, or my 5th big mistake actually, which is wasting blanks while we're all learning and testing. It happens to all of us. It will keep happening. It's really tempting to just want to put your sublimation print right onto your surface because you're so excited, but it's so important to test first so you don't waste your stuff. I wasted a lot of shirts, a lot of mouse pads, a lot of tumblers and mugs while I was learning. So to avoid the mistake, get yourself a couple of yards of 100% polyester fabric at your local fabric store and use this to test your colors and your settings and all the things that you want before you press it onto your surface. Sublimation ink and paper is cheap. Sublimation blanks are not. Always test first. Like yesterday, I saw in my sublimation group that someone had one shirt, just one shirt, to put on a sublimation design. And the shirt was given to her by someone, so she only has that one shirt. What if she makes a mistake? It's going to be a disaster. But if she tests first, like on the inside hem or the seam of the shirt, she can see how it will look and what settings she needs to sublimate in the best and brightest colors. So test, test, test. Repeat after me. Test, test, test. Okay. It's a big deal. I use this just today. I've had this actually since I started my sublimation journey. I think I got just 2 yards. I still have tons of it left. Okay. Mistake number 6. My next mistake involves the supplies we use for sublimation. The basic things we need are sublimation paper, if you're using a sublimation printer and ink, right? Blowout paper and heat resistant tape. These are consistent for all sublimation projects, no matter what type of ink you're using. Like it could be, Cricut infusible ink transfer sheets or markers. We still need all these things. Now I got lucky with the sublimation paper and I just got the A sub paper. It works great and it's still my favorite. Okay, so if you're not sure what to get, this stuff is great. In fact, I have a little test I could show you. In December, I did, let me switch here. You see this? This is a test of a bunch of different papers. Here's, I'm going to bring this in a little bit more so you can see it just a little better. One moment. I'm zooming it in. Oh, that's the intent right now. Here we go. There. Okay. So this is a test that I did in December, so just a few months ago, of a bunch of different papers. This is A sub 125 grams. This is A sub 105, basically look the same, right? This is A sub Eco, also was fine. A sub Eco is like a cheaper paper, so if you're doing like a lot of projects. This is Trupix. Trupix is, I believe, from Sawgrass, and also did fine. But down here, we've got, let me just hold this up a little bit more. Can you see this? This is laser copy paper on the left and 20-pound copy paper on the right. So you might hear people say, including in my group, that, hey, you can just use, laser paper or just use regular copy paper. I want you to note that it doesn't look as good, okay? I want you to see how good these look and how good these don't look, especially this one. Definitely don't use just like regular 20-pound copy paper. This is not as good as this. You can see that, right? These two are not as good. So A sub paper is awesome. Oops. This stuff is awesome. Okay. But blowout paper, that's a different story. So blowout paper is used to protect your heat press, your pressing pad, and sometimes other parts of your blank, like a shirt or something. Well, I knew to use white cardstock as a nice, stiff blowout paper on the bottom, so that was fine. And I knew from using Cricut infusible ink transfer sheets, which are pre-printed sublimation sheets, if you don't know, that I should use butcher paper on top of my projects when I press them, right? But the first time I went to press something on my sublimation print, I accidentally used the wrong blowout paper. I used parchment paper instead of butcher paper. It's hard to remember all the things, isn't it? It's hard to remember them all. So now it did work. It didn't actually get messed up, but it wasn't, it wasn't the end of the world, thankfully. It all was fine. In fact, you've probably all seen me do it. It was in my very first sublimation video that's on YouTube, Sublimation for Beginners. That's where I accidentally used parchment paper. You just don't know because I corrected it. Okay. So it wasn't the end of the world, but I want you to know that parchment paper isn't ideal because some brands are coated with silicone, and silicone can trap moisture when you press. Basically, moisture and sublimation don't mix well. And this is the same reason that we don't want to use Teflon sheets when we sublimate. They also trap moisture. So the general advice, what I always tell people, is to use white uncoated butcher paper. You can get a nice big roll of it and it will last you a long time. I've had this one a long time. Avoid this stuff. It's like dyed and it's like pink and sometimes it's even coated. Don't use that stuff. You can use the rolls of the white coated butcher paper. You can also get it pre-cut. I love the pre-cut stuff. I have used all of my pre-cut stuff. I need to get more. But it needs to be white uncoated butcher paper. In a pinch, you can use white copy paper, right? That also has worked for me. If you don't have either of those, okay, yes, you could try the parchment paper. And in fact, I know parchment paper works fine for some people. It did work okay for me, but it's just going to take that one blank that's really, really got a lot of moisture in it or is really finicky for you to have an issue. So this is what I recommend. Butcher paper. All right, mistake number 7. Speaking of supplies, we should talk about tape. So we need heat-resistant tape to keep our sublimation paper in place. I've got a roll of it right here. So tape will keep our sublimation print in place and avoids ghosting. Ghosting is blurring. It can happen when your sublimation print shifts during or immediately after pressing. So tape is super, super important. And we must use heat-resistant tape, or otherwise the adhesive on like regular Scotch tape will melt into the surface and look really icky. So don't do that. But not all heat-resistant tape is the same. And this is something that a lot of people learn the hard way. So I'm hoping to help those of you who haven't had to learn this one the hard way. Has anyone discovered that it's not the same? All right. So not all heat-resistant tape is the same. And in fact, I have done a test. So you know that cheap heat-resistant tape, it can leave yellow marks all over your sublimation blank because some heat-resistant tape is made for the lower temperatures of heat transfer vinyl and was never intended for the higher temperatures of sublimation. The biggest culprit is the yellow tape. It can leave stains and residue on surfaces after pressing. Let me show you, in fact. I did a test right before a video today so I could show you. So I tested a whole bunch of tape. On this side is the actual tape. I left the tape on there so you can see all shiny, right? The center column is after I pressed it. And by the way, I pressed it at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 seconds. So really hot for a long time. The center, you can see here, up here. In fact, let me put this on something so that we can see it better. So it's not all wibbly wobbly. All right. So you can see here, right in the center, that, in fact, this is not white enough. How about this? This still is probably see. We need it to be all nice and white so we can see this better. Here, this will work. Some white cardstock. Here we go. All right. Let's try that again. On the left side is the tape. I left it so you can see what the tape looks like. In the middle column, we have, this is after I pressed it and removed the tape. All right. So you can see the Cricut tape, the PYD Life, those are both blue tapes. The clear tape, no problem. This random green tape I got once, I looked it up so that you'd know what it was, but I just happened to have it. Also okay. But this yellow tape here, you can see that we got some issues. And oh my gosh, that one at the bottom, which, by the way, I'm sorry, company. I won't say your name. Your name is here, sorry. But they marketed this as sublimation tape. It totally is not sublimation tape. This is the worst case scenario. But honestly, even these right here, they are leaving marks. And if you were to use these on something like a tumbler that gets heated for a lot longer, they might even be darker. So my general advice on tape is to go with the blues and the clear. Okay, so I know that some people have some yellow heat resistant tape that works just fine for them. If it works for you, there's no reason to change. Keep using it. But if you're searching for the right tape, I usually just use Cricut tape most of the time because I use it for so many things, but these also work fine. It's okay. So if you do this, I need you to know there is no getting yellow marks off your item once they're transferred on. Again, not all yellow tape does this, but knowing which ones do and do not can be tricky. Cricut heat resistant tape is blue. However, it's never left a mark on any of my sublimation projects. Plus, it does fit in a regular tape dispenser, which really is nice because this is like a sublimation tape dispenser. And while it is kind of handy, it's not amazing, but it's kind of handy because if you've never seen this, you can kind of turn this like this and it pre-cuts it for you. So I do like that, right? That is cool, but it also takes a lot more space on my desk. And when I'm working, honestly, I like it. I like everything kind of to be tidy and small and tight and not taking up all the stuff. Here's another tape dispenser, also just really big. These big rolls aren't really my favorite. If you like them, if you love them, awesome. All right, so remember though, you can also buy clear heat resistant tape from other suppliers. That also works. My best advice is to test your tape in an inconspicuous spot before you sublimate with it to be sure that it's not going to cause an issue. Test, 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 right? All right. Mistake number 8. So another mistake that I made early on was accidentally pressing lines into my soft surfaces like t-shirts. The razor straight edges of the sublimation paper can actually indent the polyester fibers, and it ends up creating a box shape around your sublimation design that you can see because in the light, right? The light changes on it. The best way to avoid this mistake is to rip the edges of your paper carefully, which feathers them and removes those hard, straight edges. So let me just show you what I mean. So, because sometimes you're like, what do you mean rip, Jennifer? So literally, and this one's a little bit tight, but you can do it. So literally, I guess I can do it like this. You would just, I kind of put my finger here like this so I don't accidentally rip in any of my text that I want, but I just rip it like this. And I actually do this by default these days so that I can just get a nice feathered edge, and then you'll never see that straight edge, right? I'll just finish ripping this one. Does anyone else do this? I mean, the biggest struggle is really just you might accidentally, if you're not careful, you might accidentally rip, like, because this is kind of tight, right? You might accidentally rip some of your other design or something, right? But if you put your finger down like this as you're doing it, it doesn't happen. And then, of course, you'd also want to do these two edges too, okay? And again, to remove that straight edges, but you can cut it. You can also just cut it, right? You can like carefully cut it around there to remove the straight edges, but it can be more work, and you can sometimes still see the edges. They just look like a little better than square edges. So I usually just rip the edges. Also, it's actually important to remove the edges of your sublimation print before you press. Sometimes on some printers, the edges can pick up a little ink as they're passing through the printer. You might see it like on the edge here. You might not even notice it though, honestly, until you go to press, and then you see there's a little thin line of ink where the edge of your paper was. So always remove the edges one way or another. Trust me on this one. Mistake number 9. There are other kinds of lines that you can get on your sublimation prints too, and those are pressure lines. So I'm a thorough kind of person. When I do things, I like to do them right with full effort. But in the beginning, especially since I was used to heat transfer vinyl, I was sometimes putting too much effort into my heat press. Some of my first few projects came out with these weird white lines around the design, sometimes in the shape of my Easy Presses heat plate. In fact, right? This kind of, you can tell because it's kind of curved on the edges. So applying too much pressure can create lines where the image looks like it's faded, sometimes completely. So sublimation only needs enough pressure to keep the paper underneath from curling. You just need it to stay flat. You don't usually need a lot of pressure. There's some exceptions, but generally speaking, you just need to stay there and do its thing. So really the weight of the press, honestly, is usually all you need, right? You don't have to like press down, you just hold it on there. Okay, at least in the beginning when you're first learning. If you're used to heat transfer vinyl or anything else, you might be like really, really pressing on it, right? So back off. Okay, mistake number 10. I believe I'm up to 10. So another mistake that I made early on was when I was experimenting on some white shirts I'd found on clearance. I went through all the steps to a T, and I was sadly shocked and surprised when it came out of the wash faded like a 25-year-old vintage looking t-shirt. It turns out my clearance haul was a bunch of 100% cotton t-shirts. For the most vibrant results, we want to use polyester shirts or ones that are mostly polyester. Using material with less than 90% polyester content won't be as vibrant. This is vibrant. This is beautiful, right? Now you can do 65% polyester content with a faded look, and let me show you. We can get nice and close here. So here is, this is a cricket shirt, which is 95% polyester. Really vibrant, right? And you can do 60, let me double check. Yeah, nope, this is cotton. I don't have my 65% cotton one here. All right. Well, you can do 65% cotton with a little faded look, but anything less than that is eventually going to fade or wash away completely. So this is cotton, and you can see the difference here, right? This is cotton before I've washed it. So it's already faded. Let's get in so you can see the difference here. My pretty lion, right? You can see the difference here. And as I wash and keep washing this, it will eventually fade or wash away completely. You really don't ever want to sublimate on any fabric that is less than 65% polyester, unless you want to use another technique to add a sublimation layer to it first, which you can do. I have a whole video on that. I'll put the link in the description for you. It's about how to sublimate on cotton and dark colors. Bonus, you can also use this method on shirts that are in different colors than white. I'm going to show you. I have them all back here in a moment. I have so many things here. It's hard to get everything out. So let me show you a shirt here. This is a blue shirt. You see that? I'll get out a few and I'll get out a black one. And I'll get out a yellow one so I can show you. And then this one too. I have so many shirts. All these shirts, by the way, are what I'm teaching during Sublimation Camp. So if you are curious how I made all these shirts, be sure to get your free ticket to Sublimation Camp. All right, so this is a blue cotton shirt, and I used Cricket Glow in the Dark. Oh my gosh, this one is so cool too because it glows in the dark. So you can get sublimation onto other colors other than white for sure. This here is a red bleached shirt. Isn't this one cool? This one here is a yellow cotton shirt that I did with Easy Subli, right? So there's lots of options. These are a little advanced, but the point is don't do cotton or colors unless you're doing one of these things. And this is glitter HTV. Isn't that pretty and so sparkly? So other culprits for faded sublimation designs are too little heat or not enough time under the press. For example, if your sublimation design is supposed to have some black in it, but it actually looks like dark brown, you probably overcooked it and you need to back off, lower your heat, okay? So if otherwise it seems okay, but your blacks are just not right, it's probably too much heat. So just kind of like a reminder to keep in mind. Okay. Mistake number 11. I think I'm on 11. Am I on 11? Thank you, Diane. I know, bleach. We have a whole tutorial on how to bleach shirts just for sublimation, or you can, of course, use heat transfer vinyl too for it. So, all right. So let's talk about overcooking and scorching because it happens. You know, when you press something and you're revealing your beautiful new design, only to find brown marks is never something a sublimation crafter wants to see. You're like, is it a burn? No, well, kind of. Sometimes, though, fabric is coated by chemicals or the fabric is just heat sensitive. The brown marks are generally a discoloration known as scorching. You want to avoid this. I recommend white uncoated butcher paper to protect your material. Check to make sure you're not using too high of heat for your material, right? Some blanks really need to be at a lower heat. And consider switching brands if your fabric just doesn't tolerate the heat required for sublimation. If you do scorch your material, I have a fix that might help. Spray the affected area of the fabric with peroxide, like hydrogen peroxide. Cover with butcher paper and press for 10 to 15 seconds. I notice scorching most with cotton fabrics, right? So those of you who are using like sublimation spray and you're using a really high heat, you might see that like scorching around your design, okay? All right. So if it's not a burn, sometimes it's the coating. A lot of sublimation blanks like metals and acrylics and ceramics come with a layer on them to keep them from getting scratched and scuffed during shipping. Sometimes it's so transparent that you don't even realize it's there. It has happened to me. But when you go to sublimate onto it, it doesn't work. It just sort of melts and everything looks faded and fuzzy. I have totally done this many times. I mean, I guess I should be embarrassed. You would think I would like know to check for it by now, but like you look at it, it looks fine. You're like, oh, it's ready to go. Always check to see if there's like some kind of like a little sort of plasticky thing on it. Hard surfaces are usually the ones that will have a coating or a liner or something that might need to be peeled off before you can sublimate onto it. And be sure to remove it from both sides so you don't just press on one side and then melt the other one, melt all the plasticky stuff onto it, okay? So once you get past these things and things are going well, another mistake that can creep into the best of us, and that's pressing upside down. Yes, been there, done that. Now I know to always check that my print is right side up before I apply it to my blank. It's like at this point, you know, I'm practiced and I'm like, I check it. I'll often like put it down and I will tape it and then I'll pick up a corner, or if it's a tumbler, I just kind of like, ooh, did I do it right? Right. One of the easiest ways I found to remember this is just to put a little pencil mark on the back of your sublimation transfer, right? So you just, this is the right way, right? So we just put a little mark on the back at the top of the design. And then even when it's flipped over, you know exactly which way is up. It's always there. If you get in the habit of doing this, when it, you know, as it comes off your printer, you'll always know which way is up. And something else that can make a difference is that if you use the A-sub paper, let me show you. Where's my A-sub? Here it is. Like I do, if you always load your paper in the same way, the words A-sub appear on the back. Let me see, I don't know if it's too bright in here for you to see this. Oh no, you can see it. See? It always appears you put it in the printer so that the word A-sub appears the right way in the back, then you can use those words to make sure your sublimation print is the right way up every time too. So you just got to make sure you always put it in the same way, and then you can always use those little words on the back. And A-sub paper looks like this on the back, and it's, oops, sorry, I'm showing you wrong. I'm like, why is that backwards? Why is it mirrored? Mistakes. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the back. I'm like, that's really light. Right, so you can totally see this. You can read this. So this is the front and this is the back. So you want to make sure, like if you put it in the right way every time, you can use these words to make sure you did it right. It's kind of an angle, but you know, you get the hang of it after a while. All right, so speaking of upside down, how about getting things straight? So been there, done that too. So first, if you're putting a design onto a ruler, I recommend t-shirt rollers. They help a lot. You can also fold your designs in half lengthwise. So by that I mean taking a design like this and then you just fold it in half like this and you crease it at the top and at the bottom, right? So, and then you know it's where the center is and it's nice and straight. And then you just line that up with the crease in your shirt, also top to bottom, and you will never have a crooked design on a shirt again. I have free t-shirt rollers over on my blog. The link is in the description. You can also just Google it too. Jennifer Maker t-shirt ruler guide. Okay, so second, if you're putting a design on a tumbler or a mug, right? So here I've got a blank tumbler. It can sometimes end up crooked there too. I was so annoyed the first time I did it because, you know, beautiful mug. I was so proud of it. But really, it's such an easy mistake to avoid. But I did learn that since you need to wrap it tight, sometimes sublimation transfer paper shifts when you're wrapping it. So the next time after wrapping sublimation paper around the tumbler, I gently tapped it. So I'll demonstrate. We'll pretend that this is a print because I don't have one right here. Let me switch to my view so you can watch. All right, so tumbler, right? My print, we're going to pretend that this is my design, right? So if you gently tap it like this, this is going to level itself out by gravity, right? So this can help you make sure that you're getting it straight and perfectly lined up with the edge. And then nothing will be crooked. And it works like a charm every time. So just wrap, tap, then tape. All right, so let's talk about tumblers for a while, because when we're learning how to make them, there are lots of mistakes to make. So first, ghosting, basically blurring, right? So in fact, I'm going to get one out and show you one of my mistakes. So this is a tumbler that I did recently. So ghosting, it's important to keep your print on while it's warms and while it's cooling down. Otherwise, ghosting can occur because when we heat it up, the ink goes from a solid to a vapor essentially, and it gets embedded in your tumbler or into your surface. Really, this works for everything, and so it needs a little time to cool back down into a solid because it's in that like gaseous state, right? So it's important that while it's warm or while it's hot, we're like leaving our print. We're not moving it or anywhere, okay? So we're trying to avoid ghosting. Remember, this can occur when your sublimated image looks fuzzy or like there's a double exposure. I think I have another one. No, I don't. We're going to show you on this one. So I once unwrapped a sublimation tumbler and I thought my eyes were going bad because it was so blurry, but it was just that the sublimation paper had somehow shifted while pressing or right after pressing. This happens to all of us. It still happens to me when I get impatient, or sometimes I didn't tape it as well as I should have. This is really one of the most frequent issues that sublimation crafters have in the beginning. To avoid being surprised by this, secure the wrap as tightly as possible around your tumbler using lots and lots of tape. I always say tape it to within an inch of its life. And you want to make sure there's no air bubbles or space underneath the design too. And after you've pressed it, don't move your tumbler more than you absolutely have to. And don't remove the sublimation paper too early. Wait for it to cool completely before touching the wrap. And I want you to know, I have, you can see here some issues, the bottom and at the top. Can't see it. It's mostly here at the bottom. This is a result of not taping it. And it's letting in as the gas. This is my theory. I guess I don't know for sure, but as it's like hot, superheated hot air, and it allows it to come in, and you get bad contact, right? So it's not taped enough. You got to really, really, really tape the whole edge when you do it. So another mistake are seams. Have you ever had a sublimated tumbler turn out beautifully, and then you turn it around and there's an obvious giant seam up this back? Yeah, right. So me too. So hiding seam is actually pretty challenging. Let me grab a tumbler with this a better seam than that one. Hang on a second. I have a couple here. I have one. Here we go. Okay, so this is an example of one where you can see the seam. It's not bad, but you can see that there's a seam here, right? So hiding seams is actually really challenging, and it can take a seasoned sublimation pro to have a well camouflaged seam, right? Some people just don't even care anymore. So my advice is to practice, practice, practice. Here's another one, and the seam is a lot less noticeable, right? So you can see it more on this one than on this one. It's still kind of there, but it's like you wouldn't know if you didn't look for it. Also, you don't want to have too much of an overlap when you're wrapping your tumblers, just a tiny bit. And also wrap the tumbler the transfer paper around the tumbler as tightly as possible. And then tape the overlap seam of the paper entirely, not just a little bit of tape, the whole thing, and then use your fingernail or a scraper to really press that seam line to help get that print directly onto the tumbler as much as possible. And then again, be sure to tape the top and bottom of the edges completely too, to avoid the issue that you see here, right? It also helps make that line less noticeable. And if you just can't get your seams right, this is what you do. You can add a bar to the seam, as I did here. You see that? So this is for an awesome retreat that I had with a whole bunch of awesome craft content creators. So you can just add a bar to the seam so it's not even seamless. And you can do it while you're designing it, and there's no more worrying about seams. And you can also just not worry about them too. Some people make a really big deal about them, and it's very important, but it depends on who you're giving it to. Some people will never know that it's not supposed to have a seam, and it can have a seam actually. So don't stress out about that too much. That's actually also my advice. All right. If you mess up your tumbler, sometimes you can repress it. So you can use a heat gun that gets hot enough, like this one right here. So I'm gonna pull that over. This is not like a cheapo from Amazon. This is a Wagner heat gun, and it gets really hot. I was doing this earlier, and I don't know how hot it gets, but I had it up to like 750. It was really hot. So if you have a nice heat gun like this, you could also do it with a convection oven. You can actually reheat your tumbler and the ink will fade. It won't go away completely, but it will fade. And I did it right before a video so I could show you. So I applied it to right here at the top where it says Jennifer. And that was about a minute's worth. And you can see, obviously it's supposed to look like this, but the heat allowed me to start fading it. So, and if you do fade it, just keep in mind, it will not completely go away, but you can usually get it to fade away enough that then you can repress it with a darker design. So like a design that has full coverage and uses lots of dark ink, like this probably would have been okay, that will cover up the faded original design. Not all heat guns will get hot enough. Don't forget that. That Wagner heat gun did get hot enough. And, it would have taken a while. I'm not going to kid you there. It probably would have taken like a half an hour. But you can get it to fade away. Just remember, you have to replace it with something darker. And it's not going to be perfect. You're probably, if you look close and you know what you're looking for, you know that you can see the design underneath. But if you are learning, this could be a way to like reuse your mistakes, right? All right. So another mistake that is really common is sizing. I still struggle with this one because I am impatient, but this is a common issue that is easily solved by some quick measuring. Before you even print your sublimation design, double check that it's the proper size for your blank. If it's a full coverage design where the image goes from edge to edge with no blank space around it, print it slightly larger than your blank so the image bleeds off the edges. Then measure it before you press it to make sure it printed at the size you think too. Sometimes when we print our, from our computers or whatever, and if we're not careful with our print settings, things can be off and our print might be smaller by accident. So when you print, make sure that there's no settings that say fit to page or scale to fit or, even like a percentage or anything like that. Make sure you're always printing at the actual size. There will be, it uses various language, but you'll see it in your print setup window. All right, now let's talk about the dreaded mirroring mistake. The kryptonite of most sublimation crafters is remembering to mirror your sublimation print. While it's not a life or death decision like it is for Superman, it does mean that it could be life or death for your project, right? So the good news is that, well, most of us have made this mistake at least once. I know I've made it many times. There are ways around it. And though the item may seem ruined, Having a backwards mug of coffee on your workspace while you're crafting might just be a great reminder to mirror if needed. I know people will make signs that say, remember to mirror. So you must always remember to mirror a sublimation design before you press it. Follow this rule and you'll never have backward sublimations again. However, beware that turning mirroring on in Cricut Design Space, which some of us use, right? And then also turning mirroring on in your print settings can, it'll basically cancel each other out, right? So if you have mirroring on in your print dialog window at the same time as Cricut Design Space, your image will be mirrored twice and it will show up backwards when you press it. So only mirror once and always check it after you print. Ask yourself, is this mirrored? So for example, well, I'm not intending to press this. It doesn't matter. Is this mirrored? This is not mirrored. I can read this. I can read this just fine. You should always be able to not read it. That's how I think, right? Always double check. Always ask yourself, is this mirrored after it's printed? Okay. And that's a lot of stuff. Did I miss any mistakes? I don't know. I bet you there are. I'm going to have some Q&A at the end, so you can ask me and I'll do my best to answer. All right, so something else that I didn't know in the very beginning when I really started doing online crafting, I would say, is that there are people like myself who love to share what they know through tutorials and videos. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Finding some people that you like is a big deal. So find some people that you resonate with. Follow them, learn through them, do their projects. They'll tell you exactly what they used and how to do them. It is a great way to learn. So for example, Sublimation Camp, which is coming up really soon. This is a free online event hosted by friends of mine that is filled with tons of popular projects. It is a really, really great way to immerse yourself into sublimation and make fun stuff and hang out with other crafters like me who are interested in sublimation too. So you can learn more about it and get a free ticket. It's free. Let me put the link up again. It's right here. Yep. So you can learn more about Sublimation Camp over at jennifermaker.com/sublimation camp. I highly recommend it. I think, in fact, I have my little page up here so I can show you who's got a free ticket. Let's see. Is it this one? Yes. This is kind of what it looks like. Hang on a second. I think this is messing it up. Well, yeah, it's more or less this is what it looks like. My screen looks wonky right now, but when you go to jennifermaker.com/sublimation camp, okay, awesome, you guys. Thank you. I'm glad you're doing it. It's free. It's fun. It is super fun. It's a really cool event. You just go to the link that you see up here, and then you just click here. And after you join, it actually, in fact, we'll just do it right now. Hang on a second. Hello. And you just put in your name, first your email, then your name, right? And you click get my free ticket. And your ticket access is right here. Click this, bookmark it. Okay, so this is you'll get an email, but I happen to know for many of you that the email thing it can get tricky, right? Sometimes it goes to spam, sometimes for whatever reason. But you can just click on this and I'll just show you what it looks like. See, so here is it hasn't started yet, so you're not going to be able to see them. Well, it looks like the Sublimation Basics are there, which is really cool, by the way, Sublimation Basics. But the camp schedule is right here, and you can see everything. I am on day 1. I'm on Thursday. Sublimation on shirts of all types. So I highly recommend Sublimation Camp. If nothing else, you get to hang out with other crafters who are interested in sublimation too. You can learn so much by participating in just one workshop, but there's actually over 25, and they are so cool and they're free. So this year's Sublimation Camp starts on Thursday. It's May 4th through 6th, and you can get a free ticket to view all the workshops and the supply list if you want to make stuff at jennifermaker.com/sublimation camp. Super fun, and it's all happening. It's all online too, because I know everyone asks me that. We don't want to go anywhere. We can do all of this in our whatever we want, right? All right. Yeah. And you guys all got your tickets? I see something about someone taking sick days. I wouldn't tell you to take a sick day. No. I did see a question about whether it's recorded. So all of the workshops are actually pre-recorded. So I already recorded my workshop, and but it starts on May 4th. But we pre-recorded it so it would be nicely edited, so you don't get technical problems like I had today, stuff like that. You have 24 hours to watch it, right? So, but actually the Sublimation Basics, you can watch throughout the entire camp. So there's 9 Sublimation Basics classes. So for those of you who are new, you have all 3 days to watch them, and it's recording, so you get to watch. Even if you're in Australia, New Zealand, London, wherever you are, you can watch at the time that's right for you. So Deborah says, I missed what number 5 was. I don't remember what. I attempted to number them, and then I lost track of the numbering. All right, so so don't forget jennifermaker.com/sublimation camp. It is super fun, and it all happens from the comfort of our own homes on your computer, your tablet. There are nearly 30,000 crafters already signed up, so come join us. I am a camp counselor, also camp mentor, which I think is kind of like camp mom, which is why I'm talking about it right now. And I'm showing you how to make all of the Sublimation shirts, right? I gave you a preview of them earlier. Sublimation shirts. This is the design that we're making. It's just the one that I'm demonstrating with, but all of them. So white polyester shirts, cotton blend shirts, color shirts, even the unusual things like Easy Subly and DTF and DTV. All the shirts. I have over 20 shirts in my workshop. It is a really great introduction if you're interested in making shirts. Anyway, so be sure to get your free ticket before they're gone at jennifermaker.com/sublimation camp. All right. And the biggest things, is that right? Give me a second. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Hang on just a second. I need a hand from Greg. Our technical issues are causing, so give me just a second, and he's going to help me out. I have a little button down there that he installed for me so he would come out when I needed him. There he is. Will you help me? What? Over there? Thank you. Give me a second, everybody, so I can make sure I get this right. Can you just change that so that it's in the right spot? Thank you. There's yeah. There we go. Thank you. That's what I needed. Yeah, that's what I needed. Thank you. That's all I needed. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yep, thanks. Technical issues. Thanks, Greg. I really appreciate it. That's all. You're good. Thank you. Bye. The thing is that technical issues are so very normal. It is, even though I have been using computers since the late 80s, consistently all this time, so I'm very, very familiar with them. I got my first iPhone the year they came out, all of it. There's always going to be issues. What matter? And like, I had issues today getting into our video, and our video, we started 45 minutes late. I could have just given up, everybody. I could have just given up, but I didn't want to give up. And Greg and I sat here and we worked on it, and we went through all the troubleshooting. At first I was really stressed. I will not lie, but we calmed down. I got calmed down, and we just worked through it methodically, and we figured it out. We did it. We're here. And this happens with the kind of crafting that we're doing. It is so important to stick with it and be persistent. Persistence is so much a part of success. It is the biggest part of success. If I were to write a book about success, it literally would say, don't give up in it, over and over and over. I can't stress that enough. All right. I think I got all this stuff. All right, so, and one more thing I want to leave everybody with before I go. Let me just clean up just a little bit here. We have so many things here. All right. The biggest mistakes that I still make are not pressing my blanks at the right time and temperature. This is hard for everyone because until you know what to do, it's often a guessing game. So what we've done is tried to test and record all of the pressing times, temperatures, and pressures on all of the heat presses, not just the Cricut Easy Press, but like the traditional ones, the auto press, the mini press, the convection ovens, the tumbler presses, all of them. And so we've tested and recorded them and we put them into one spot. So none of us on the Jennifer Maker team had to guess again. My team and I worked on this together for a long time and we put it into a book we call the Sublimation Cookbook. It has recipes for over 150 sublimation blanks. Basically everything that we could think of, everything. Even the so-called hacks, you know, the Easy Subli, DTF, DTV, sublimation sprays, laminates to get sublimation onto the surfaces that you can't normally. You can learn more about it. I should keep holding it up. You can learn more about it at sublimationcookbook.com. There are over 12 free pages that you can get from it. Let me just show you real quick so that you can see. So this is for a recipe for ceramic mugs with handles, right? So you can see we put the ingredients, the equipment. Can you see that okay? Everything you have to do. Here's the order that you have to wrap your mug in. And then here's all the cook times on the Cricut mug press, a tumbler press, a convection oven, an air fryer, and then our tips and tricks. And it's filled, the book is filled with all of these recipes. All of everything that we could think of is in there. Okay, so there's 12 free pages that you can get. Now that we have the book, I use it all the time. All the time. I knew I needed it, of course, but I don't think I realized how much I would use it. I can't remember all these settings on my own. I was looking up things in my own videos and tutorials like most of the time, and now I can just flip to the page in my book, and it's so cool. I think you might find it useful too. You can get it at sublimationcookbook.com. So if you have any more questions, please leave your question below this video. I'd be more than happy to help you out or a member of my team. I also recommend my sublimation group at jennifermaker.com/sublimation group. It is an awesome place to get inspired, ask questions. There's a lot of us in there. We're all sublimation crafters, all super helpful. And that's at jennifermaker.com/sublimation group. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this look at our sublimation mistakes and all the things that you can do to avoid them, because I hope you do. Because when we stand on the shoulders of others, we can go farther and do more, right? So stand on my shoulders, stand on the shoulders of others that are like me, and you can go more and do more and avoid my silly mistakes. All right, well, that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.